Senator Perdue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank both of you for your tireless effort in this area. Ambassador, I want to go back and talk about the adoption issue briefly, if I could, just to get a little more elaboration. As you said in your testimony, there are about 400 families waiting for these children, and in your testimony, you even document that some of these children have actually died waiting for this process to be taken care of, and then today dozens need medical attention. I understand the parliamentary action that was taken, and that is encouraging, as well as the reconstruction of this interministerial commission to review these cases. As you said, we kind of heard this before. So what can we do? I know you're doing everything you can individually. I've seen that. What else can we do to help the release of these children?
We are using every tool that we have in our toolbox. We're using every tool that we have in our toolbox, including the voices from this chamber to encourage the government to do the right thing. And we were encouraged when they allowed some children to leave late last year. And we're hopeful that they will make the right decision to move. I think they're somewhat surprised about how important this issue is to us and how much of a priority this is to us. I don't start a meeting with the DRC government without starting on the adoption issue. As much as this issue of elections are high on our agenda, we start with the adoption issue, and they express surprise at that. And we have to keep the pressure on, and I think they are feeling the pressure. So again, I think that we don't want to do anything that will lead to harm. We want to keep impressing upon them for human rights and just for humanitarian reasons. They need to allow these children to join their families. So again, I will keep the pressure on. I ask that you as a body keep that pressure on, and each time we get one of those children reunited with their families, we have to thank them, but keep the pressure on until we get all of them released. 2 have died, and we don't want to see any more die.
Thank you. Mr. Perriello, obviously democratic governance is at issue in this part of the world, as you mentioned in your testimony. Looking at some of these countries, Burundi, DRC, Rwanda, Uganda, they haven't seen, they really haven't experienced a democratic transfer of power. And so I see the administration's response to President Kagame in Rwanda, his direct intervention there. We just heard about his telephone call with Kabila. And yet Ngeso has not had that kind of direct involvement. So I guess what I'm looking for is where are we in terms of our consistent approach with all of these guys in terms of supporting improved governance? I mean, I hope they understand how important that is to economic development as well as the social development of those countries. So what are we doing to maintain a consistent pressure on all of these leaders to adhere to true governance principles that they have committed to in the past? But when it comes time at the end of the term, the 2 terms, they seem to have a better idea.
So I think it's an incredibly important question, and I want to echo what the ranking member said before he had to go about the importance of investments in governance, particularly in this area. And I think it's something where we have many partners on the ground in civil society and in many cases within governments themselves who actually want to do the difficult work of governing well. I want to make one comment about the adoptions thing before moving on, which is just to reiterate how dedicated Assistant Secretary Thomas Greenfield and others have been. While many of us, it's not our primary job to work on this issue, they have made clear that this is an all-team effort. And so all of us have been asked to pitch in on this, which we are glad to do given the stakes for these children. And I just want to commend the families as well, most of whom have gone out of their way to be incredibly patient and very engaged with all of us. And I think it's been just an unbelievable human experience to witness that and what they've gone through. On the governance issue, I think we have the President Obama set a very clear line in the sand in his ADA speech about the importance of constitutions that have term limits. I think it's widely known that it was the largest applause line of that speech, and polling across Africa has reinforced the idea that this is a widely popular notion among the African people, even though it may not have the same level of popularity among the African leaders themselves. This is particularly popular and important as a policy with the African youth, which represent in many cases 50% or more of populations around the continent. This is not a situation where we can simply declare it so, but I think we can be the strongest force possible for making the case of why constitutions matter. I think in a situation like Rwanda, you've seen them get many indicators up to speed that should suggest foreign direct investment would follow, but you haven't actually seen FDI follow in that country. And one of the issues raised by the private sector repeatedly is concerns about closed political space and the instability that inevitably comes with that set of policies. We believe Burundi, in many ways, is a tragedy, but it is also something that has proven the point of the policy to begin with, which is that constitutions matter. Constitutions matter, and people worked hard for this. And I think that's, again, one of the things that's been most inspiring for me in this job is the fact that we are reinforcing the voices of people around the region who really do want to put these periods of bad governance, of ethnic conflict and other conflict behind them. So investments in governance are well spent. I think where we can use both positive and negative incentives to try to encourage governments to do the difficult work to move in the right direction, we can. And again, while we're very concerned about the trends, we don't believe that this is a lost cause. The people of Burundi spent a decade looking at post-conflict reconstruction, including along ethnic lines. The military, the investment in the military, for example, showed a degree of professionalism and inter-ethnic cooperation that has probably been one of the factors that has kept Burundi from getting far worse. We've seen the same thing in faith communities and civil society groups. So while it's hard to prove a negative, the fact is I think those investments of the last decade are probably one of the things that has kept things from moving back to a situation in the 90s. So we want to build on that success. At the same time, we try to check impunity, as Senator Cardin mentioned, for those who are trying to threaten that.
I'm out of time. Let me just ask both of you real quick, just an off-the-wall question. Of all the aid that comes into the Lake region in Africa, what percentage is coming from the United States today, ballpark? I know I've asked for that number, and we really don't have a precise way to get at that number, but Ambassador?
I don't know that figure, but we will get back to you with an answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Coons.
Well, thank you, Chairman.